I don't remember the exact moment I became invisible. It wasn't an event I could pinpoint. But there was a certain subtlety to it, a gradual wearing down of my presence. Like the slow erosion of a cliff face against the tide. It happened the morning he said it. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing quarterly numbers. The kind of task I could do with my eyes closed when Gregory Knight, my boss, walked into the room. The fluorescent lights above hummed quietly, and the soft click of his dress shoes on the marble floor was the only sound. He was always composed, always polished, I thought. "Good morning, Jessica," he said. His voice smooth, deliberate. He paused, looked me over, and then added with that almost imperceptible tilt of his lips, "Be grateful you're here." I hadn't even looked up from my screen, but I felt the words, felt them settle into my chest, heavy and sharp like stones dropped into still water. I swallowed. It wasn't anger that twisted in my stomach, but something colder, more calculating. "Excuse me," I replied, finally meeting his eyes. His gaze was casual, almost bored, as though he hadn't just thrown a grenade at me. I said, "Be grateful you're here," Gregory repeated, his tone never rising. It was an instruction, a command. The slight emphasis on here made the implication clear. I wasn't irreplaceable. I wasn't special. I blinked, stunned. For a moment too long. In my head, 1,000 things rushed at once: his words, my loyalty, the projects I'd put in overtime to perfect, the way I'd sacrificed. But my mouth, it didn't move. Instead, I straightened in my chair, pretending to absorb his words with a calmness I didn't feel. "Of course," I finally said, voice flat, "I'm grateful." I went back to typing. The soft click of the keys the only sound in the room. He nodded and turned on his heel, heading to his office, leaving me to choke down the sting of that sentence. Grateful? The word sat with me. How many times had I worked nights to meet deadlines? How many weekends did I let slip by, empty and without a trace of rest, just to make sure the numbers were right? How many projects had I handled without a word of acknowledgement from him? And yet, there he was, telling me to be grateful. The sharpness of the word grateful left a bitter taste. He thought I owed him something, that much was clear. But I didn't owe him gratitude, not for this. I didn't owe him anything. I stood and walked over to the coffee machine in the corner of the office. My steps quiet. A few of my colleagues glanced up as I passed, but I didn't look at them. I needed a moment, just a moment, to gather myself. I fixed my coffee, letting the warmth of the mug settle into my palms. I could feel their eyes on me now, the way they always did when I passed by. Curiosity, maybe envy, but never understanding. "Everything okay?" Rachel asked, her voice light, not quite teasing but not entirely concerned either. "Fine," I replied, keeping my tone even. I turned back to the desk, letting the moment pass. I needed it to pass, just fine. But it wasn't fine. I didn't need to be grateful for this job. I didn't need to thank Gregory Knight for what he'd given me, what he thought he had given me. I had made myself indispensable to this company, to this team. Not him, me. I spent the rest of the day locked in my office, eyes fixed on the numbers, on spreadsheets, on anything but him. The sting of his words still lingered. But now it was something else, to a quiet, simmering realization. This wasn't about gratitude. It was about control, and he wanted to remind me that he had it. But here's the thing about control. It's a fragile thing. It's built on the idea that no one notices, no one pushes back. He thought I'd take it, just as he thought I'd take all the other tiny slights, the microaggressions, the indifference, but I wouldn't. I stayed quiet, though. That was the thing. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I would make him see, make him understand, but not yet. The day passed slowly. Every glance from Rachel, every passing conversation, felt like a distraction from the bigger picture I was starting to see in my mind. The truth was that Gregory didn't get it. He didn't understand that I wasn't here because I had to be. I was here because I was good at my job, because I was better than him at half of it, because I had done everything right, and now I had a decision to make. I didn't need to be grateful for this job. I didn't need to be grateful for anything. I was beyond that. And when the time came, I would show him just how wrong he was. Asterisk. I was never one to snoop. In fact, I took pride in my discipline. The office was my domain, a place where everything I touched turned to competence. I knew my boundaries and I kept them. But the morning I found the memo, those boundaries were crossed not by me, but by the carelessness of Gregory Knight. It happened during an ordinary coffee break. I was passing his office on my way to the kitchen. When I saw it, the door was slightly ajar, and I caught a glimpse of something on his desk. My heart skipped. There was a folder, half open, the words "confidential" clearly visible. I stood there for a moment, frozen. I knew I should walk away, pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity gnawed at me, relentless and sharp. Slowly, I pushed the door open, stepping inside before I could talk myself out of it. The memo was tucked under a stack of papers. but I could make out enough from the title to know what it was. Personnel Replacements, Fall 2025. I took a breath, my fingers trembling ever so slightly as I picked it up. It was a mistake. A careless mistake. He hadn't meant for me to see it. But I did. The first line hit me hard. We need a younger, more dynamic leader for the department. It felt like a punch to the gut, that sentence. But I didn't flinch. I read the rest. My pulse quickening. They were planning to replace me, specifically me, with someone they thought would be more aggressive, more innovative, someone who could bring in new energy. I was nothing more than a placeholder in their eyes. Grateful you're here. I heard Gregory's voice in my head. That damn phrase again, now. The truth hung in the air like smoke. I wasn't irreplaceable. I wasn't even a priority. I was expendable. I slipped the memo back into the folder, heart pounding. But I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. This wasn't about me. This was about control. They thought they had it. But they were wrong. This was where I'd make my move. I turned on my heel and walked out, closing the door gently behind me. Jack had always said I was too patient for my own good. He used to tell me, you'll see everything eventually. The people who think they have power will show you their hand if you wait long enough. Jack had been right about a lot of things. I couldn't go to Jack now, though. Not yet. His mentorship had always been about strategy, about waiting for the right moment to act. He never encouraged rash decisions. If I told him now, he'd want to move immediately. And that wasn't how I worked. Not anymore. I made my way back to my desk, keeping my movement steady, my expression neutral. Sophie passed me in the hallway, giving me a quick, slightly curious glance. She had always been the type to keep a distance, both professional and personal. She was too ambitious for her own good. But she wasn't dangerous. Not yet. She probably heard something about Gregory's plans, though. Or maybe she'd seen the way things had been shifting in the office. But that didn't concern me now. What mattered was Gregory. The idea of revenge didn't feel like an urge. It felt like a quiet certainty. His mistake had given me a path, a way forward. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started reviewing the documents from the meeting I'd had with Gregory the week before. The notes were still fresh in my mind. The way he dismissed my suggestions with a smile and a chuckle. He'd spoken to me like I was a child, pretending to be patient with my less experienced ideas. Now I understood. He was already planning my exit, but I wasn't going anywhere. I spent the next hour thinking. A solid plan needed time to form, but it was already clear. They thought they could replace me with someone more dynamic, but they didn't realize what they were losing in me. They didn't know I had access to things they didn't, to information they hadn't even considered. I ran the numbers again, carefully this time on the company's projected growth. I saw where the holes were, where they'd missed important signals. I knew how to leverage that. Gregory had no idea what he'd set in motion, but he would. The phone buzzed on my desk. I glanced at the screen. It was Jack, and I had a feeling he'd sensed it too. He always did. Hey, I said as I picked up. You found it, didn't you? Jack's voice was calm, but I could feel the tension beneath it. I didn't answer immediately. What could I say? The truth or the plan? Yeah. I replied finally. I found it, and you're not going to let this slide, Jack said. Like he already knew the answer. What are you going to do about it? I leaned back in my chair, the weight of everything pressing down on me for the first time today. I'm not sure yet, but it's time to think, Jack. It's time to show them exactly what they've underestimated. Jack chuckled softly. Good. Take your time. Just make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you make the first move. I could almost hear him smiling, knowing this would unfold the way it always did with me. Methodical, precise, calculated. I will, I said. Thanks, Jack. I hung up and took a deep breath. The plan was already forming in my mind, and Gregory Knight, he had no idea what was coming for him. I wouldn't rush this. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a hasty decision. He'd been careless, and now it was time to show him what happens when you underestimate someone who's always been 10 steps ahead. Asterisk. I wasn't angry, not yet. I wasn't even surprised, if I'm being honest. It was a quiet burn. The kind of fire that creeps under your skin and leaves no mark. I had expected something like this for weeks, maybe longer. Gregory Knight's betrayal was a carefully executed maneuver, one I had seen coming but couldn't quite prepare for. I spent nights in my office, the only light in the room coming from the glow of my laptop screen. Each hour, each passing minute, I dissected every meeting, every project, every word he'd ever said to me, the small things, the ones he probably didn't even think twice about. The way he patted me on the back after a successful pitch, calling me his right hand. The way he praised my work in front of clients, knowing I had put in extra hours. They were all just tools, weren't they? His way of keeping me loyal, keeping me believing in his vision. But now, I saw it for what it really was, manipulation. The carefully curated mentor act had been nothing more than a performance, a means to keep me in line. I was never the star of his show. I was just a pawn. And that's when it hit me: he had underestimated me. The realization didn't sting. It wasn't that kind of pain. It was clarity, quiet, sharp, and freeing. Gregory thought I was too loyal, too steady to ever question him, to ever see through his little games. He had counted on me being blind to the power dynamic between us, to the fact that I was the one holding everything together, not him. I wasn't a fool. I had seen the signs, even before I found that memo. The subtle dismissal of my ideas in meetings. The way he'd often defer to Sophie despite her lack of experience, just to make me doubt myself. He wanted me to doubt my own value, to think I was nothing without his validation. It wasn't about me being good enough. It was about his need to be the one pulling the strings. I could feel the tension rise in my chest as I clicked through the last of the company's financials. On my screen, I had memorized them all by now, each number a building block in my new strategy. This wasn't a betrayal, this was an opportunity. I wouldn't be the one to blink. The phone buzzed on my desk, the screen lighting up with Jack's name. I exhaled, running a hand over my face before answering. Hey, his voice came through, calm, knowing, you know. Don't you? I said, leaning back in my chair, my voice steady despite everything inside me urging to explode. I know, Jack replied. There was no judgment, no surprise in his tone. He's playing his hand, isn't he? I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped me. He thinks I don't see it. He thinks I'm too loyal to recognize that I'm just another cog in his machine. You're not just a cog, Jess, Jack said, his voice cutting through the static in my mind. You've always been the engine. He's the one who's blind. Maybe, I murmured. I stared out the window, the dim city lights flickering like distant stars. But I can't just rush into something. I can't make a move until I know exactly how to use it. You've got time and you've got the advantage, Jack said. Just remember, you're not playing his game, you're writing your own rules now. I thought about it for a moment, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. Jack had always been about strategy, the long play. He never rushed. That was why I trusted him all those years. I'll do it my way, I said finally, more to myself than to Jack. But I'll make sure he knows exactly how wrong he was. There was a pause on the line before Jack responded, softer now. You know how to make them see, Jess, but don't lose yourself in the process. Keep your clarity. I won't forget it, I said and meant it. I hung up, staring at the phone in my hand for a moment. The clarity Jack spoke of, it was the key. I couldn't let myself get caught up in anger or revenge. I had to be methodical, precise. The moment I started making rash decisions, I'd be no better than the people I was fighting against. That's when I heard the soft click of the door opening behind me. I turned just in time to see Sophie standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a casual air that didn't quite match the sharp look in her eyes. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said, her voice light. But there was a flicker of something else behind it, curiosity, maybe. Or something darker. I wasn't sure. Just thought you might need a break. I regarded her coolly, not saying anything for a moment. Sophie had always been the type to play the game, always knowing just how to toe the line between friendly and competitive. The way she smiled when she knew I'd been working late, the way she complimented me on my work, only to turn around and subtly undermine me when she thought I wasn't looking. She wasn't a friend. No matter how much she pretended need something, I asked, my voice even. Her lips curved into a smile, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. Actually, yeah, I heard something interesting about Gregory. She stepped inside, walking toward my desk. I don't suppose you know anything about that, do you? I didn't react. Sophie was trying to gauge how much I knew. It was a power play, a subtle one, but it didn't escape me. She was fishing for information, just like I had done a week ago. I don't know what you mean, I said, shrugging slightly, my eyes never leaving hers. Right? She said, a little too quickly, as if she'd expected me to crack. She studied me for a moment longer before turning to leave. Just be careful, Jess. People get too comfortable in this office and then things change fast. I watched her go, but her words lingered in the air, heavy with implication. Sophie wasn't just playing the game, she was trying to be the game. But she didn't know the rules yet. I did. I turned back to my laptop, the clarity in my mind sharper than before. The game had changed and it was time to make my move. I had always been the calm one, the quiet one, the one who never lost her head, never let emotions cloud her judgment, and that, I realized, was what made me dangerous. Because when you're calm, when you don't rush into action, you see everything. You see people for who they truly are, what they truly value. Gregory had underestimated me. But it wasn't just his betrayal that stung. It was the presumption that I would be blinded by it, that I would rush into some kind of impulsive revenge. No. This wouldn't be impulsive, this would be strategic, calculated. I spent hours, days, really thinking about the ways I could use the very system that had been designed to trap me. The company's legal loopholes, Gregory's own secrets that I had witnessed over the years, the relationships I built with every department. I had the advantage. I wasn't the one being dismissed, the one being shown the door, no. I was the one holding the key to everything. And Gregory, with his arrogance, had given me the perfect opening. The first piece was simple. His personal life. He was so careful, so composed in the office. But I'd seen the cracks. He was sloppy with his phone, his passwords. I had always been good at reading people, picking up on the little details. When I first started working with him, I'd noticed how often he would leave his office unlocked, how easily he let his personal calls slip into the open. I'd never listened until now. It wasn't just the office politics that I had to manipulate. Gregory's personal weaknesses were just as important, maybe more so. I had access to things most people didn't, things I hadn't even realized I was noticing at the time. His fear of exposure, his need for control, and his secretive behavior were all pieces in a puzzle I was now ready to complete. The problem was, I couldn't move just yet. Not until everything was perfectly in place. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The night stretched out before me, a quiet expanse of time that felt like my ally. I thought about my family for a moment, my father, who had taught me to think ahead, to never make rash decisions, to build a plan and stick to it, no matter how long it took. I had learned early that the best revenge was the one they didn't see coming. It was the kind of revenge that didn't make a scene, didn't get messy. It was a revenge that made people look back and ask themselves, how did this happen? My father had always been a man of few words, a man who knew the value of patience. I never understood it as a child, not really. But now I did. Patience wasn't about waiting. It was about knowing when to act, when to strike, and right now, it wasn't time yet. I had to wait until the right moment. I pushed the memory of my father aside, focus. I had more immediate things to consider. The next piece of my strategy was simple: leverage. Gregory needed me more than he knew. His success, such as it was, depended on my ability to manage the day-to-day chaos of the department. I had built those systems. I had designed those processes. Without me, he would falter. That's what I needed to make him realize he needed me more than he was willing to admit. And when that time came, when he was at his lowest, when he realized how deeply he miscalculated, he would know exactly who had done it. But for now, I needed to gather more information that wasn't just about Gregory but about everyone. There was a lot to play with, more than enough to make my move with precision. I pulled out the company's internal documents, contracts, client agreements, financial statements, things I had access to that no one else thought to notice. There were discrepancies. I knew there would be. That's the thing about big companies, they have layers of people and processes, and not all of them are as airtight as they seem. Gregory's greed had blinded him to the finer details, the ones that mattered. I made a note. Another point in my favor: the company's legal team had missed some key clauses in their contracts, gaps that could be exploited with the right amount of pressure. Gregory had made sure I was the one handling the numbers, the one who knew how everything worked, but he had never suspected that I was learning the ins and outs of the whole operation. Now, those same systems, those same numbers would be my weapon. I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a malicious smile, not yet. It was a smile of satisfaction because I knew what I was capable of. Another hour passed. I didn't get up from my desk. I barely noticed the time passing, the quiet of the room, the soft hum of the computer. Everything seemed to fade into the background as I lost myself in the details, in the strategy. This was my moment. Everything else was just a means to an end. I could feel the shift in the air when Gregory came into the office the next morning, his usual swagger in place. He walked straight to his office, but not before giving me a glance, a look that carried with it that faint trace of superiority, the one that had always grated on me. He was too comfortable, too confident. He had no idea what was coming. I kept my eyes on my screen, pretending to be absorbed in the task at hand, while I watched him. Out of the corner of my eye, when he stepped into his office, I knew the moment had arrived. I had everything I needed. It wasn't about rushing into this, not yet. It was about playing my part, about making sure every move counted. I would act with precision when the time was right. And when that moment came, he would understand what it truly meant to underestimate me. The game wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. I've always known that power lies in the details. The small things that most people overlook, those are the keys to everything. The documents nobody reads, the conversations no one notices, the glances that flicker too quickly to register, unless you're paying attention. So, that's what I did. I paid attention. I started watching, listening, cataloging everything. At first, it was subtle, just a few misplaced emails, a conversation I overheard in the hallway, A conversation Rachel accidentally left open on her laptop. I saw where the cracks were forming, where Gregory's empire was faltering. But those things didn't matter right away. Not yet. What mattered now was who I could trust. Or more importantly, who I could use. Rachel, the legal assistant, had always been someone I kept an eye on. She was young, eager to please, and overly loyal to Gregory. She thought I was just the quiet, dependable one, the one who didn't rock the boat. But she didn't know how to navigate the tides the way I did. She was still learning how to play the game, and I could use that. I caught her in the break room one morning, sipping her coffee too quickly, her nervous energy unmistakable. I leaned against the counter casually, offering a smile as she glanced at me. She shifted uncomfortably. Big day ahead, I asked, making the effort to sound casual. Disinterested even. Rachel's smile faltered. Yeah, I've got some legal stuff to finish up for Mr. Knight. Of course, I said, maintaining a calm tone. You always seem to have a lot on your plate. She chuckled nervously. It's not too bad. She paused, looking around the room, as if making sure no one else was listening. But I raised an eyebrow. Waiting, she lowered her voice. But he's been pushing a lot of things through lately, you know? Some stuff that feels, I don't know, a little off. I mean, I've been double-checking things, but some of the paperwork just doesn't add up. I'm not sure what he's doing with the numbers. I studied her face, letting the silence stretch between us. She was nervous, unsure. Perfect, I knew. I had to tread carefully. But this was a crack in the wall I needed. Maybe you should let me take a look, I said, keeping my voice even. We wouldn't want anything falling through the cracks, right? Rachel hesitated, biting her lip. You think he'd notice, not if we're careful, I said, my tone light. If there's something worth looking at, it's better to deal with it now than later. Don't you think? She nodded slowly. Yeah, you're right. I left the break room feeling like I had just taken the first step towards something much bigger. Rachel didn't know it yet, but she was now part of the plan. She would be the one to give me the paperwork. I needed to dig deeper into Gregory's mess, to find the discrepancies that would make everything fall apart. But I needed more than just legal documents. I needed allies in the right places. Sophie, for instance, had been my rival since day one. She always had her nose a little too high in the air, always a little too eager to get ahead, to step into my territory. I had no doubt she was making moves on her own, trying to find a way to push me out. But Sophie didn't know how to keep her cards close. She liked to play her hand out in the open, thinking everyone else was too naive to see it. I caught her one afternoon, standing by the window in the conference room, gazing out of the city as if the view could offer her some sort of clarity. I walked in quietly, letting the soft click of the door handle announce my presence. Sophie turned, eyes narrowing slightly when she saw me. What do you want? I stepped forward, offering a polite smile, not letting her cool demeanor throw me off. Just thought I'd stop by and see how things were going, you know? It's been a bit tense around here lately. She crossed her arms, still standing by the window. Tense? She laughed lightly. You're just imagining things. I raised an eyebrow, stepping closer to the table where the contracts were strewn out. Are you sure about that? Because I've noticed some changes lately. Some shifts in how things are being handled, and I'd hate to think I was left out of the loop. Sophie's eyes flickered briefly, just for a second, but it was enough. She didn't want me to know, but she was already trying to position herself for something bigger. Maybe she thought she was smarter than the rest of us. But Sophie didn't have the subtlety, the patience, the long-term vision that I did. You don't need to worry about the details, she said quickly, her tone a little too sharp. Things are fine, they're under control. I smiled a little too sweetly. Of course, I'm sure they are. It's just, I've been thinking, with everything going on, we should probably make sure all our ducks are in a row. Gregory's got a lot on his plate right now. Sophie stiffened. I think you're overreacting. It's not that serious. Of course, you're probably right, I said, turning to leave. But if there's anything I can do to help with the details, just let me know. Her expression darkened, but she didn't say anything. I could tell she was calculating the implications of what I had just said. Maybe she would see it as a threat, or maybe she'd take it as an opportunity. Either way, it didn't matter. She didn't realize she was already playing her part. The final piece was Jack. He had been my mentor, my guide through all this, and I trusted him. He knew how to stay calm when everyone else was scrambling. When I called him, I could almost hear the smile in his voice when he answered. Everything okay? He asked, his tone warm but knowing. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady. It's all falling into place. Jack paused. What's next? Now. I wait. I let everything settle, let them think they're in control. But I know where the cracks are, Jack. I know where the weaknesses lie. It's all in motion now. That's the way, Jack said. Just remember, make it subtle. Don't let them know you're the one pulling the strings until the very end. I won't forget, I said, closing my eyes briefly, the weight of everything I had planned settling into me. They'll never see me coming. I hung up, standing in the middle of my office, letting the quiet of the room wrap around me. There was still more to do, more pieces to position. But for now, everything was in place. The game was moving, and I was the one holding the pieces. Asterisk asterisk, the quiet before the storm has a certain kind of weight to it. You feel it in your bones. That subtle tension in the air, like the moment before a flash of lightning splits the sky. That was how it felt this week, nothing outwardly different. But something was shifting. Something I could almost taste on the back of my tongue. Gregory had started watching me more closely. It wasn't obvious at first, just a glance here, a second too long look there. But I knew. His gaze lingered too often when I was in meetings. His questions seemed more pointed than usual. His tone a little sharper when he addressed me. He was testing me. I could feel the unease building inside him, the paranoia that something was off. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking straight into the trap I'd set for him. I had expected this. Gregory wasn't exactly the subtle type when he was threatened, even if he thought he was. He didn't understand that by watching me more closely. He was only confirming my suspicions. I didn't panic. Panic never helped anyone. Instead, I did what I had always done. I observed. I made sure I stayed composed. That I never let on that I was aware of his scrutiny. The key was to make him think that he still held the power, that he still controlled the narrative. I had a quiet moment in my office when I saw Rachel walking past, her eyes shifting nervously as she glanced inside. I motioned her in, and she hesitated only for a second before stepping inside. "Everything all right?" I asked. Keeping my voice light, my gaze steady, Rachel nodded, but her fingers twitched nervously. "Yeah. It's just, Gregory's been asking about you. More, a lot more." I raised an eyebrow, pretending not to care. "Has he?" Rachel shifted from foot to foot, biting her lip. "Yeah, like, where you've been, what you're working on. He's been on edge lately." I smiled softly, masking the satisfaction building inside me. "I'm sure he's just worried about his empire. Nothing to worry about." Rachel didn't look convinced, but she nodded and quickly excused herself, clearly eager to get out of the tension that had thickened in the room. As soon as the door closed behind her, I allowed myself a small exhale. Gregory was getting paranoid. Perfect. The next few days passed in a blur of routine, but I could feel it. The trap was closing, piece by piece. His paranoia was a final confirmation that I had done everything right. That night, I called Jack. I hadn't spoken to him since the initial stages of this plan, but now, with everything coming to a head, I needed his calm advice. "Hey, Jack," I said when he picked up. "Things are shifting. Gregory's watching me." There was a beat of silence on the other end before Jack spoke, his voice low but sharp. "Did you expect anything less?" "No," I said, pacing around the small space of my office. "But it's different now. He's nervous. He knows something's off. It's making him sloppy." Jack chuckled softly, the sound warm and steady. "Good, that's what you want. Let him make his mistakes. Let him show you the cracks." "I'm ready," I said, my voice more certain now. "Everything's in place. I just have to wait for the right moment." "Patience," Jack warned, though I knew it was more a reminder to myself than anything else. "Don't let him make the first move. Let him dig his own grave." I smiled, leaning against my desk. "I've got it. He won't even see it coming." "Good," Jack replied, the approval clear in his voice. "You've got this." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone with a sense of quiet confidence. Gregory was walking straight into the trap, and when the time came, when I finally made my move, he would understand the depth of his mistake. The next day, Gregory called me into his office. I had been expecting it. He wanted to confront me, to get a sense of how much I knew. It wasn't an unusual request. I had been in his office countless times before, but this time was different. His posture was stiff when I walked in, and he didn't greet me with the usual half-smile. His eyes flicked toward the papers on his desk before meeting mine. "Jessica?" he said, his voice low, a touch more serious than usual. "You've been distant lately, I've noticed." I raised an eyebrow, keeping my expression neutral. "Distant? Yeah. You're not as involved in the daily tasks as you used to be. Not answering calls as quickly. Not following up on things the way you normally do," he said, leaning forward slightly, his fingers tapping on the desk. "Is something going on?" I could see the flicker of suspicion in his eyes. He was trying to gauge me, trying to see if he could catch me in a lie, if he could force me into revealing something. But he wouldn't. I was too far ahead of him. "I'm just focusing on the bigger picture," I said evenly. "There's a lot of work to be done." Gregory's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer than necessary. I could feel the shift in the air, the subtle tension between us growing. "I see. he said finally. Sitting back in his chair, just keep me in the loop, okay? I don't want any surprises. Of course, I replied smoothly. I wouldn't dream of surprising you. He nodded, his lips tight, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. But I knew it didn't matter. He couldn't read me. Not now, not ever. He had underestimated me from the start, and it was only a matter of time before he paid the price for that mistake. As I left his office, I could feel the weight of the next move pressing down on me. Gregory was playing his part, and all I had to do now was wait. The trap was set. All that was left was for him to fall into it. I walked into Gregory's office like I was just another employee reporting for duty. The door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality that mirrored the moment I knew everything was about to change. He was sitting behind his desk, as always confident, authoritative, the kind of man who believed the world bent to his will. But this time, it was different. I wasn't here to beg for approval. I wasn't here to grovel. I had no intention of making this easy for him. Jessica, he said, looking up at me with his usual practiced smile. But there was a flicker of something behind his eyes, a momentary unease he quickly hid. What's this about? I took a seat across from him, folding my hands calmly in front of me, no rush, no tension in my voice. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to lay the facts out. I found it, I said, watching his face closely as I placed a memo on the desk in front of him, the memo you thought would stay hidden. He immediately stiffened, his eyes narrowing just slightly, but he didn't reach for the paper. He just sat there, studying me, trying to read whether I was bluffing. You've been snooping through my things, Jessica? His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I let the silence hang for a moment, giving him the chance to feel the weight of the situation. Then I said, I didn't need to. Snoop, you made it easy. Gregory's jaw clenched, but he didn't react. He wasn't the kind of man to lose control. Not publicly. At least, you're not in the position to make demands, he said finally, his tone taking on that edge of superiority that had always made my blood boil. You're fortunate to even be here. I raised an eyebrow, leaning forward just slightly, but my voice remained calm. You think I'm fortunate? I asked. You think I need to be grateful for anything you've given me? Let's talk about what you've given me. Gregory didn't flinch, but his posture changed. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes calculating. You're treading dangerous ground, Jessica. We could have avoided this. You didn't need to make it personal. Oh, it's personal now, I said. My voice low, cold, but it wasn't when you decided to replace me behind my back. When you pushed me aside for someone younger, someone more dynamic. That wasn't personal, was it? His face tightened at the mention of the younger hire he'd been grooming. I'd known the moment I found the memo that was the plan. Replace me. Put someone in my place. Someone who would be grateful. Someone who wouldn't question his decisions. Things change, Gregory said, his voice now defensive. I was doing what's best for the company. I shook my head slowly. That's not what this is about. You weren't thinking about the company. You were thinking about yourself. You've made threats, Gregory, to me, to other employees. His eyes flicked toward the door for a fraction of a second, then back to me. He was calculating, figuring out whether he could talk his way out of this. But I wasn't here to listen to his excuses. I already had everything I needed. I know about the accounting holes you've been covering up, I continued, voice steady, measured. I know about the unreported bonuses, the off-the-record payments, the way you've been inflating numbers to make the company look better than it actually is. Gregory's face went pale. The mask of control was slipping now, just a crack, but enough for me to see. His eyes darted around the room like he was looking for an escape. But there was nowhere to run, not anymore. You're accusing me of fraud? His voice was sharp, desperate. You think you can just... I don't think, Gregory, I interrupted. I know. I've seen the evidence. I've had it for weeks. I slid a stack of papers from my bag and placed them in front of him. Each page marked with discrepancies, with missing signatures, with altered figures. I've already contacted the legal team. Rachel's been helping me look through the records. I'm sure she'd love to testify. Rachel, his loyal assistant, the one person I'd never expected to betray me, had been the key to unlocking the door. It hadn't been hard. She was young, impressionable. She wanted to please him, but she didn't know how to manage the pressure. She didn't know how to hide the things she'd found. Gregory's eyes widened for a split second, and I saw the panic flicker across his face. You're making a huge mistake, he said quickly. You don't know what you're messing with. I know exactly what I'm messing with, I replied, my voice low, like I was teaching him something he should have learned long ago. This isn't about revenge anymore, Gregory. It's about exposing the truth. Everything you've been doing is about to come to light, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. His hands gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles white, but he said nothing for a long moment. He was calculating, trying to figure out his next move. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to negotiate. He wanted to save face. But it was too late. You don't have the power to take me down, he finally spat. I built this company. You think anyone will believe you over me? Not everyone, no, I said calmly. But the truth doesn't need everyone, it just needs to be heard, and once it is, you'll have nothing left. I stood up slowly. My movements deliberate. This wasn't a victory yet, but it was close. The pieces were in place. All I had to do was watch as everything crumbled around him. As I turned to leave, Gregory called out, his voice trembling with the fear he was trying so desperately to mask. You're making a mistake, Jessica. You'll regret this. I paused. For a moment, glancing over my shoulder, the room was thick with the weight of everything unsaid. I already have, I said, before walking out. The door clicked shut behind me, and I felt the smallest of smiles tug at the corner of my lips. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And the truth had a way of setting everything right. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The morning the news broke, I was already sitting at my desk, my fingers flying over the keyboard as if everything were just another day. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Gregory Knight's empire was crumbling, and I was the one who had set the pieces in motion. I hadn't anticipated the speed at which things would escalate. One phone call to the board, one well-timed leak of the financial discrepancies, a carefully worded email to the legal team, and the rest took care of itself. By noon, the whispers had started at first soft, then growing louder, spreading like wildfire. Whispers of corruption, of fraud, of Gregory's manipulation of the system. I didn't hear the details. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift in the air as the office buzzed with unease. I saw it in the way people looked over their shoulders, in the way Rachel glanced nervously at her phone. She had been the one to hand over the documents, the one who had unknowingly played her part in all of this. And while she had been loyal to Gregory, I knew she was scared now. She didn't know which side to choose. Jessica, she said quietly, stepping into my office just before the lunch break. Her face was pale, her voice shaking. Did you hear what happened? Gregory, I turned in my chair slowly, giving her a calm look. He's gone. They fired him. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, clearly stunned by the suddenness of it all. But how? How could they? He was a liability, I said, softly, watching her closely. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. She blinked, her lips parting, but no words came out. She was processing, trying to understand her role in it. She'd never meant for things to get so big. She hadn't understood the consequences when she'd handed over the paperwork. The company is in chaos, she murmured, almost to herself. They're calling it a scandal. All the press. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes steady on her. You did the right thing, Rachel. But you didn't have a choice, did you? She didn't answer right away. I knew what she was thinking. She was trying to figure out if she was going to be next. The problem with being too loyal is that you can't see when the ground beneath you is shifting. Are you going to be okay? I asked, my voice quiet. I don't know, she admitted, her shoulders slumping. I don't know what comes next. I nodded. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out. The truth was, I wasn't interested in what came next for Rachel, or anyone else in the office. This was about something else now. The power had shifted. Gregory, once the king of this little empire, was now just another name in the corporate obituary column. I wasn't celebrating. There was no satisfaction in seeing someone like him fall, no sense of victory. Just a quiet certainty that everything was in its proper place now. The phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was the board. I picked up without hesitation. Jessica. A voice on the other end said. It was Paul, one of the senior members of the board. We need to talk about the transition. We're going to need someone to step in and manage things while we sort everything out. You're the most qualified. I felt a small, almost imperceptible smile tug at my lips. The words I had waited to hear. I understand. We'll need you to take over Gregory's duties temporarily. We're going to make an official announcement. Soon, you'll be the interim CEO until we figure out the long-term solution. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping lightly on the desk. I'll get started immediately. The line went quiet for a moment, and I could hear the satisfaction in Paul's voice. He was relieved. They all were. The company was in disarray, but they knew I could handle it. I wasn't going to just hold things together. I was going to rebuild. After I hung up, I didn't feel any sense of excitement. The weight of what I'd done was settling in, but it wasn't a burden, it was clarity. Gregory had tried to destroy me, to belittle me, to replace me. But in the end, he had only exposed his own weakness. Rachel lingered in the doorway for a moment, watching me closely. What happens now? She asked softly. I met her gaze. Now, we make sure this company runs smoothly. There's a lot of work to do. But we'll get it done, she nodded, unsure. But I saw a flicker of something else in her eyes, trust. Maybe, or fear, it didn't matter. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to reclaim what had been taken from me. The day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless decisions. The rumors swirled around the office, but I ignored them. I had work to do. And nothing, not Gregory, not anyone, could distract me now. Later, as the office began to empty out, I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the city below. It was a beautiful view, the lights of the skyline shimmering in the evening haze. But there was no satisfaction in it, no joy, just a quiet realization that this was what I had been waiting for. Gregory had fallen, yes, but the company, my company now, was mine to lead. And this time, it would be on my terms. The days after Gregory's departure were quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, but quiet, an eerie calm hanging in the air like the stillness before a storm. The office buzzed with uncertainty. People were scrambling to figure out what came next, whispering in hallways, trying to claim territory in the power vacuum left by Gregory's fall. But I remained still, unmoved. I had already decided what was next, and it wasn't up for debate. I sat at my desk, watching the chaos unfold. From my perch, Rachel came in more than usual, her face pale, always clutching a stack of papers like a shield. She was nervous. She didn't know where to stand anymore, whether to align with me, the new leadership, or hedge her bets with the others who were pushing for control. Everything okay? I asked, keeping my voice light. She hesitated before nodding, her hands twitching. Just a lot of things moving around. People are worried. No one knows what's happening with the future. Who's going to take over? Who's in charge? I met her gaze, letting the silence stretch. She was looking for reassurance. But that wasn't my job. I'm in charge, I said simply. And so are you. You just need to stay focused. There's work to be done. She gave a half-hearted smile, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I wasn't the same person she had worked under before. I wasn't offering comforting words. I was offering control, and I had no intention of letting that slip through my fingers. The rest of the office was a circus, but I wasn't paying attention to the noise. I was making calls, having meetings, drawing up plans. People were trying to get close to me, desperate to know where I stood. Some of them were playing their cards early, seeking favor, trying to claim their piece of the company. Sophie, especially. She was the loudest, the one who thought she could ride this wave to the top, thinking I wouldn't notice her movements. She was still that same eager, ambitious creature I had always seen, one who wanted it all, but didn't understand the game. It was early afternoon when she walked into my office, the door swinging open with that familiar, almost forced confidence. She wasn't here for a casual conversation. I knew that much. I think it's time we had a talk, Sophie said, standing at the threshold. Her tone was smooth, but her eyes were too sharp, too calculating about what happens next. I didn't stand up. I didn't even gesture for her to sit. I just looked at her, the silence stretching between us like a game of chicken. She was trying to figure out how to play this, to see where I stood, how far she could push me. She wasn't used to not being in control of the situation. Go ahead, I said, crossing my arms and leaning back in my chair, giving her space to make her move. She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took the bait. You're in charge now. That much is clear. But we both know you didn't get here alone, so what are you offering? Who's going to take charge of what? I raised an eyebrow, her words thinly veiled with the hunger for power that had always been a part of her. She wasn't asking for direction, she was asking for a deal. I think you already know the answer to that, I replied. I'm in charge, and you can either accept it or leave. Her face shifted, just barely. The pretentiousness faltered for a second, replaced by something ruffier, maybe. She wasn't sure if I was bluffing. She wasn't sure if I was truly ready to take the reins, but she knew better than to push me too hard. What if you need help? Sophie's voice softened, her tone taking on that edge of negotiation. What if you need someone to help stabilize things? Someone with experience? I've got connections. I don't need help, I interrupted, my voice firm, cutting through her spiel. What I need is for people to do their jobs. That's it. Her face tightened, her jaw clenching for a brief moment. Fine, she said, turning on her heel. But don't forget, Jessica, you can't do it alone. I didn't respond. She wasn't my ally, not now. She was just another obstacle I'd have to deal with when the time came. She wanted power, but she didn't understand that power wasn't about taking it. It was about holding it. The next few days were filled with small, strategic conversations, emails, phone calls, meetings with department heads, making sure everything was running smoothly. The cracks Gregory had left behind were becoming more evident, but they weren't insurmountable. I had a clear vision of how I wanted things to go, and nothing, not Sophie. Not anyone was going to get in my way. Rachel came to me again, this time with a much calmer demeanor. She was starting to get it, starting to understand what I meant when I said we were in charge now. I've been thinking about what you said, she said, standing near the door, about staying focused. I didn't respond, letting her finish. Do you think things are going to be okay? She asked, her voice small. I met her gaze, letting her see the clarity in my eyes. Things are fine, we're fine. It's just a new beginning. I didn't offer any other assurances. I didn't need to. The truth was simple. I had taken control of my own destiny, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As the office quieted down as the tension slowly began to ease, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't a victory. This was the beginning of something far greater. A chance to rebuild, to set things right. But this time, it would be on my terms, and I wasn't about to let anyone forget that. The transition was smoother than I expected. The whispers about Gregory's downfall faded quickly, replaced by a growing sense of uncertainty about the company's future. But I wasn't worried. I had already mapped out the path ahead, my path. I was no longer answering to Gregory, no longer second-guessing my every decision, no longer living in someone else's shadow. The role I had stepped into was more than just a job. It was a reflection of my true worth, the value I had always known I possessed but I kept hidden. For far too long, I sat in my new office, the one that used to be his, watching the sunlight filter through the large windows. The city looked different now, more real. Somehow, more mine. Rachel came in just as I was getting settled, holding a stack of papers in her arms. She looked uncertain, still adjusting to the new dynamic. She had been loyal to Gregory, but she was beginning to understand who truly held the reins. Now, good morning, she said, her voice a bit tentative as she approached my desk. I've got the updated reports you asked for. Put them on the table, I said, gesturing to the nearby surface. I'll look over them later. She hesitated for a moment before following my instruction. As she did, I noticed the way she glanced around the room. It was the same nervousness she'd had when Gregory had first brought her into the fold, looking for approval, for validation. But that was the difference now. I wasn't here to validate anyone. Not anymore. She set the papers down and stood there awkwardly for a moment, as though unsure of her place now that things had shifted. Rachel began, her voice softer than usual. Things are moving pretty fast. A lot of people are, well, they're nervous about the future, about what happens next. Let them be nervous, I replied, my voice calm but firm. They should be. The only ones who need to be focused now are those who can handle what's coming. Rachel nodded, but I could see her confusion. She was trying to find her footing in this new world, trying to figure out where she stood now that the balance of power had changed. I've noticed something, she said after a beat, still hesitant. Some people think you'll change, that things will get, I don't know, messy. I looked at her, meeting her eyes directly. Messy isn't necessary. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to do what's right for the company. No drama, no distractions, just the work. Her eyes flickered, a mixture of relief and uncertainty. She wasn't used to this side of me. I had always been the quiet one, the one who put in the hours and did what was asked without question. But that had changed. The old me, the one who had been afraid to make waves, was gone. We'll handle it, I continued, my voice steady. I need you to stay focused, Rachel. I need you to trust me. I do, she said quickly, though there was still a trace of doubt in her voice. It's just everything feels different. You're different. I almost smiled, but I didn't. That's the point. It's time for something new. There was a brief silence between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just the calm after the storm, the quiet understanding that things had shifted, and neither of us needed to say it aloud. Rachel nodded, looking at the floor for a moment before meeting my gaze again. I'll keep working on the numbers. I'll get everything to you as soon as it's ready. Good, I said, watching her turn to leave. And Rachel? She stopped at the door and looked back at me, waiting. Stay sharp, I said. We're in control now. Don't forget that. She gave a quick nod before leaving, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. This was what it felt like. I realized this was what control felt like, not the overwhelming, suffocating need to dominate, but the quiet, steady assurance that you had everything you needed to move forward, to rebuild. Jack called me later that afternoon, and I could hear the approval in his voice as soon as I answered. Everything's going as planned, I assume? Jack asked, a hint of a smile in his tone. I leaned back in my chair, looking out over the city again. Better than expected, I replied, the words feeling solid. Grounded. I'm in control now, Jack. It's not about power for the sake of power. It's about making things right. I know what I'm doing. I know you do, he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. Just remember, this is a different kind of leadership. No room for mistakes. I won't make any, I said confidently, my eyes narrowing slightly. it's time to get to work. Jack was silent for a moment before speaking again, his voice softer this time. I'm proud of you, Jessica. You've come a long way. I could feel the weight of his words, the quiet approval he had always given me. But it wasn't enough to change the fact that the world had already shifted. This was mine now. I had claimed it. And I wasn't looking back. I've learned a lot, I said. But it's just the beginning. We spoke a little longer about the logistics of moving forward. But I was already thinking ahead. This wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about showing that the work I had put in, the quiet strength I had built, was all that mattered. I wasn't here to make people love me. I was here to make things better. When the call ended, I stood up, walking over to the window again. The city stretched out before me, endless, full of possibility. This was my foundation now. This was my new beginning. And I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me. The room is quiet. The hum of the city outside the window, a constant undercurrent to the stillness. That has settled inside me. I lean back in my chair, my fingers tracing the edges of the papers on my desk, the weight of it, all the decisions, the moments. The people who tried to stand in my way has become something I no longer feel the need to analyze. The pieces are in place. The work is done. The chaos that once defined my world is gone. The whirlwind of ambition, manipulation, and betrayal has faded, leaving only the remnants of what I built. There's no victory in it now, no need to gloat or bask in the aftermath. Everything has fallen into place just as I planned. But the triumph feels different than I imagined. It's not the rush of winning, it's the quiet peace that follows. I don't need to prove anything anymore. Not to Gregory, not to Sophie, not to anyone. The phone rings, pulling me from my thoughts. Jack's name lights up the screen. I don't need to answer, not really. But I do. Because his voice has always been the one I can count on to keep me grounded. Hey, Jessica, he says, his voice steady and calm. How's everything? I exhale slowly, the weight of the day settling into my bones. It's fine, it's done, I knew you'd handle it, Jack says. But I'm asking how you are. Not the company. You've been through a lot. I lean forward, resting my elbows on the desk. I'm fine, I say. Though the word feels foreign now, I am fine. But it's different, the work's done, the pieces are in place. You've always been good at seeing the pieces, he says. And I can hear the pride in his voice. But how does it feel now? I pause, thinking I could tell him everything, the satisfaction, the weight lifting off my shoulders, the clarity that has settled into me. But I don't need to explain it, not to him, not to anyone. It feels quiet, I say finally. Like everything is how it should be. I've reclaimed control. But it's not about proving I can do it, it's just mine now, good? Jack says, his tone soft, as if he's finally hearing what he's been waiting to hear. You've learned what I've always known. Power doesn't need to scream, it's quiet, it's steady. I think about that. The power I once sought so desperately, the power that burned in me like a fire, has cooled, not in defeat, but in understanding. It's no longer about crushing anyone, about showing them how far I could rise. Now, it's just mine. And it's enough. I'm not angry anymore, Jack, I admit, my voice softer now. I used to be angry at him, angry at everyone who underestimated me. But now, it's not about that. I've moved past it. I'm glad to hear that. He replies, you don't need to be angry to be strong. The world's already seen what you can do. The silence stretches between us, comfortable now. It's been so long since I felt this kind of peace. I know there's still work to be done, still decisions to be made. But for now, I let the stillness take over. I don't need to be grateful for what I've been given, I say quietly, almost to myself. Not anymore. I've built this, and it's enough. Jack doesn't respond immediately. I imagine him, as he always has, thinking carefully before speaking. You've earned it, Jessica, all of it. I know, I reply, the weight of the words grounding me further, and that's enough. We talk for a few more minutes. But the conversation has already turned. We're talking about logistics, the future. But in the back of my mind, I know that the future is mine now. No one can take it from me. Not Gregory, not anyone. I hang up the phone and sit back in my chair, looking out the window again. The city below moves like it always does, people rushing, cars honking, life happening. But I no longer feel like I need to be part of the noise. I've created my own space in all of it, a place where I can move forward on my own terms. No distractions, no need to prove anything. There's no more noise, just the quiet. The kind that comes after everything has settled, after everything that needed to happen has already happened, and I realize with surprising clarity that this is exactly what I've been working toward, a new era in my era. I don't need anyone's approval. I never did. The power I have now doesn't need to roar, it doesn't need to demand attention. It's simply there, quietly undeniable. And for the first time, I am at peace with it. I lean back in my chair, staring at the phone buzzing on my desk. It's Gregory's name on the screen. But I don't rush to answer it, not anymore. I've already won. He just hasn't realized it yet. The power he thought he had over me, the control he wielded so carelessly, was always an illusion. He never understood the truth, that when you stop seeking approval, when you stop begging for someone to see your worth, that's when you've actually taken control. That's when you're untouchable. I can't help but smile as I watch the phone ring. Knowing what's coming, he's scrambling, trying to make sense of everything that's falling apart. But he doesn't get it. I've already dismantled his empire, piece by piece. And he still hasn't figured out that I was the one holding the strings all along. I let it ring out, my smile never faltering when the voicemail kicks in. I finally swipe the screen to silence it. No need to drag this out. He's not calling for a conversation. He's calling for a last-ditch effort at control. A final, desperate plea to put things back in his hands. But it's too late for that. It was always too late. The sound of footsteps approaching my door pulls me from my thoughts. Sophie. I recognize the cadence of her steps before she even knocks. Come in. I call out, keeping my voice level. She enters, her usual confidence practically radiating from her. She's been biding her time, waiting for the right moment to make her move. She thought she could play the game better than me, that her ambition would get her further. But I've seen it in her eyes for weeks now. She's scared. Jessica, she says, her tone a little too sweet, a little too practiced. I need to talk to you about the direction we're taking with the company, you know. Now that things are changing. Go ahead, I reply, leaning back, making sure my posture conveys the complete ease I feel. She's not in control anymore. She never was. Sophie sits down across from me, crossing her legs with an air of feigned casualness. I know she's trying to read me, trying to figure out where I stand. But I've already made my decision. You've been moving fast with these changes, Jessica. She begins, her voice tight, barely concealing her frustration. Some people are concerned about how things are being handled. They think you're consolidating power too quickly. I meet her gaze without hesitation. They're worried because they're scared of losing their place, scared of someone else taking control. Her lips twitch, but she doesn't respond immediately. You really think you can do this alone? She asks, her eyes narrowing slightly. You think you're the only one who has what it takes to keep this company afloat? I'm not doing this alone, Sophie, I reply calmly. But I am the one making the decisions now. You're right about one thing, though. I have what it takes, she scoffs, leaning forward just slightly, trying to close the distance between us. That's funny. I always thought you were too cautious to what's the word safe. But now, it seems like you're throwing all your chips in, taking risks, you're making moves, Jessica. You've changed. I lean forward slightly, matching her intensity. I haven't changed. I've just stopped letting people dictate my moves for me. Her expression falters for a brief moment, and I can see it in her eyes. She's calculating. She's wondering whether I'm bluffing or whether I'm truly in control now. The uncertainty is there beneath the surface, and it makes me more certain than ever that she doesn't have the stomach for what's coming. I don't know if you've noticed, but the world doesn't work on favors. I continue, my voice steady, unwavering. It doesn't work on loyalty, or loyalty with a price tag. It's about who's in control. And that's me now. Not Gregory, not you, not anyone else. Sophie's hands tighten around the armrests of her chair, the muscles in her jaw tightening. She's frustrated, but there's something else beneath that, something deeper. She thought I was a pawn, someone she could outmaneuver. Now she's learning that I was never a pawn. I was always a queen on the board. So what? You're just going to take everything. Sophie spits, her voice rising, just like that. You think people will follow you? You think they'll just forget how you? I cut her off with a sharp look. You think I care about their loyalty, about their opinions? I don't need anyone's approval. I didn't need Gregory's. I don't need yours. You were never a threat to me. Sophie, you were just a distraction. Her face flushes with anger. But I don't back down. The words have already been spoken. There's no turning back. Fine, she says through gritted teeth, standing up abruptly. You'll see. You can have your little empire. But don't think this is over. It's just the beginning. I stand as well, watching her storm out of my office, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. There's a part of me that feels nothing, no satisfaction, no pleasure in watching her leave. There's only a quiet understanding. Sophie was never a part of the plan. She was just someone who had to learn her place, just like Gregory. Just like the rest of them. The door slams behind her. But I don't move. I don't have to chase after power anymore. It's here with me, and it's steady. I sit back down, exhaling deeply as I glance at the phone again. The voicemail icon blinks, Gregory's name still flashing on the screen. I pick it up, staring at it for a moment. Then I delete it. There's nothing left to prove, not to Gregory, not to Sophie, not to anyone. The real power lies in knowing when to let go, and I've let go of everything that held me back.